We spend so much time thinking about how to make a fortune, but what about how to keep one? Turns out getting rich and staying rich are two completely different skills, and they require two completely different mindsets. So today, we're going to explore why. Let's dive in. And this quote from our source material, man, it just hits the nail on the head. Getting wealthy, that often involves big risks, a ton of optimism. But as we're about to see, staying wealthy is a whole other ballgame, one that's all about caution and a very healthy dose of fear. To really get this difference, let's rewind the clock. We're going back to one of the most dramatic moments in financial history, the great stock market crash of 1929. And we're going to follow the stories of two men whose fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye. So on one side, you got Jesse Livermore, an absolute legend, a true trading genius. And on the other, Abraham Germansky, a super successful real estate guy who, like pretty much everyone in the Roaring '20s, was just pouring his money into that booming stock market. Okay, picture this. It's October 29th, Black Tuesday. The market is in an absolute freefall. Panic is everywhere. There are even rumors of investors jumping out of windows. So when Jesse Livermore gets home that night, his family is just hysterical, totally convinced that they are ruined. But then, Livermore drops an absolute bombshell. He explains that he didn't bet on the market going up. Oh no, he bet on it crashing. He shorted the market. In a single day, Jesse Livermore made the equivalent of $3 billion. Just like that, he was one of the richest men on the planet. So what about our other guy, Abraham Germansky, the real estate mogul? Well, he was last seen on Wall Street, just tearing a stock ticker tape to shreds in a complete frenzy. And then he was gone. He just vanished, presumed to be wiped out, another victim of the crash. So there you have it, right? A clear winner and a tragic loser. A simple story of genius versus foolishness. But what if I told you that's not where their stories actually end? And this is where Livermore's story takes a wild turn. After that massive win, he got overconfident. He started making bigger and bigger bets, taking on way too much risk. And just 4 years later, he'd lost it all. Everything. Broke and ashamed, he went missing, just like Germansky had. And tragically, he later took his own life. And here it is, the fatal flaw they both shared. I mean, they took totally different paths, but they were both masters at the game of getting rich. The problem was they had absolutely no idea how to play the game of staying rich. Their story really pulls back the curtain on a fundamental truth. Staying wealthy isn't just about doing more of what made you wealthy. Nope, it requires a completely different skill, what you might call a survival mindset. Let's just break this down. Getting money, yeah, that often takes optimism, taking some smart risks. But keeping it, that takes the total opposite. It requires humility. It requires a healthy dose of fear, this understanding that what you have can be taken away just as fast as you got it. If you had to boil all of finance down to just one word, that word would be survival. And why is that? Because the real magic, the magic of compounding your wealth over time, it only works if you can stick around. A single wipeout, just one catastrophic loss, can erase decades of hard work. And hey, don't think this is just for beginners. This quote is from Michael Moritz, a billionaire who runs Sequoia Capital, one of the most successful venture capital firms in history. Their secret after 40 years? They are constantly afraid of going out of business. They know that yesterday's success means absolutely nothing for tomorrow. Okay, so how do we actually do this? How do we apply this survival mindset? Well, let's take a look at a playbook from some of the modern masters of the craft. Everybody studies how Warren Buffett made his money, but it's maybe even more important to study what he didn't do. He didn't load up on debt. He never ever panicked and sold everything during a crisis. He never retired or gave up. He just survived. And by simply surviving, he let compounding do its incredible work for nearly 80 years. This story just illustrates the point perfectly. See, way back in the day, Buffett and Munger had a third partner, a guy named Rick Guerin. He was just as smart as them, but as Buffett said, he was in a hurry. During the big downturn of 1973, Guerin was using a ton of leverage, borrowed money, and when the market crashed, he got a margin call. He was forced to sell his shares to Buffett for pennies on the dollar. He got completely wiped out. So, from these stories, we can pull out 3 key rules. First, your goal should be to be financially unbreakable, not just to get the highest possible returns. Second, you have to plan for your plan to fail by building in a big margin of safety.
And third, and this one is the most interesting, you need to cultivate what's called a barbelled personality.
So let's dig into that third rule, because it's kind of a brain bender, right? How can you possibly be paranoid and optimistic at the exact same time? Well, it turns out this is the secret mindset of the ultimate financial survivor.
See, sensible optimism isn't just a blind belief that everything's going to be great. No, it's the conviction that over a long enough timeline, the trend is generally upward, while at the same time, you fully accept that the journey to get there is going to be an absolute nightmare of volatility, recessions, and crises.
I mean, just look at the last 170 years in the US. The standard of living shot up an incredible 20-fold. But during that exact same period, the country went through 33 recessions, 12 major crashes, wars, you name it. The lesson here? Growth doesn't happen when things are calm. It happens in spite of all the chaos.
And that's the ultimate balancing act. You need that short-term paranoia, saving cash, avoiding too much debt, planning for the worst, to make sure you survive all the inevitable misery. Because only by surviving can you stick around long enough to actually benefit from that powerful long-term optimism. And we'll end by coming back to the man who started our story. After he lost everything, Jesse Livermore looked back on his downfall and he blamed it on getting a swelled head. He learned the hard way that the exact same confidence that helps you get rich can become the arrogance that makes you lose it all.
So getting rich and staying rich aren't just different skills, they're different games entirely. And I guess the most important question you can ask yourself is, which one are you playing? Thanks for tuning in.